Cncfreak here, and I thought the next collection video I would do would be for the Apple computers, starting at the Apple IIe's going all the way up to the iMac. Hope you enjoy it. First up are my two Apple IIe computers. I first got exposed to the Apple IIe's in high school when I took a computer applications class and then later a basic programming class. They were mostly business computers, but they made decent gaming machines as well. Next are my two Apple IIc computers. The one on the left is the original Apple IIc with a 5 1/4 drive. The one on the right is an Apple IIc Plus that has a 3.5 inch drive. The Apple IIe and Apple IIc's CPU ran at 1 MHz, whereas the Apple IIc Pluses ran at 4 MHz. Although you could slow the CPU down by holding the escape key on boot. Next, I'll show you a few of the more popular Apple II games. First up is King's Quest. It was released in 1984 for the Apple II computers and is the granddaddy of all graphic adventures. You play as Sir Graham, who is trying to recover 3 treasures: a shield, a mirror, and a chest that's forever filled with gold. Even though the graphics haven't aged well, it's still a great adventure game. Next we have Oregon Trail, a pseudo-adventure educational simulation game. Released in 1985, you play as a group of pioneers who have to travel from Missouri to Oregon. You have to manage things such as food, supplies, wagon parts. There's also quite a few obstacles you have to overcome as well. This definitely is a fan favorite for many Apple II users. Next up is a great RPG, The Dark Heart of Ukrul. Released in 1989, this is a first-person turn-based RPG, where 4 adventurers set out to defeat the great evil Ukrul. Ukrul's kind of a weird name if you ask me, but it's still a great RPG. Chet, or the CRPG Addict, gave this game a 61. That's not out of 100. Only 2 games scored better, Pool of Radiance and Ultima 5, and right now he's up to 1990 and playing all the RPGs. And here we have one of the early RPGs, Eamon. It was released in 1980 into the public domain and was mostly distributed via the Apple user groups. Currently there's over 250 modules that exist for this game. Also, you can get this for the PC, for Windows, Linux, and Mac. If you haven't already tried it, I would highly recommend it. As long as you can get past it being text-based and having no graphics, you'll absolutely love it. This is Deathlord, released in 1987. It's an Ultima-style RPG with an Oriental flavor. This is a massive game and brutally hard game. It has 8 races and 16 classes in it. You basically have to form a party to defeat the evil Deathlord. It also comes with a utility that allows you to import characters from Ultima 3, Bard's Tale, and Wizardry. And here's a game that needs no introduction, Ultima 4. It was released in 1985 for the Apple II computers. You take the role of the Avatar. You could also play Ultima 1 through Ultima 5 on the Apple II computers. Ultima 3, 4, and 5 make use of a soundboard called the Mockingboard. Currently they're almost impossible to find and quite expensive, but there are 2 individuals, one in Bulgaria and one in South Korea, that make newer Mockingboards. Currently the music that's playing is from Ultima 4 using this said Mockingboard. Next are a few arcade ports you could play on the Apple II. This is Donkey Kong, a pretty decent arcade conversion. This is Frogger. Great game, doesn't sound too good though. Next we have Moon Patrol. This is an absolutely fabulous port. And finally, we have Miss Pac-Man, another really good conversion. Next will be the Apple II GS computers. And here we have my two Apple II GS computers. The one on the left is a ROM 1 and the one on the right is a ROM 3. The original Apple II GS computer was first introduced in 1986 and discontinued in 1992. It utilized a 65C816 processor running at 2.8 MHz. Unfortunately, this was one of its downfalls, as the Atari ST and the Commodore Amiga ran at about 7 to 8 MHz. But this did keep it almost 100% compatible with the earlier Apple II computers. One thing it did have going for it was its sound chip. It utilized an Ensoniq 8-bit wavetable sound chip that produced 32 channels. Another great thing about the Apple II GS was its expansion slots. Just like the Apple IIe, you could put cards in it to extend the capabilities of the system. Up next, I'll show you some of my favorite games for the Apple II GS computer. First up is Sylphid. It was developed by GameArts and distributed in 1988 for the Apple II GS by Sierra. It's a shooter, a really good shooter at that utilized some really good music. I never got a chance to play this on the Apple II GS back in the day, but I did play it in DOS. This was one of those games that sometimes I would just let you intro play for hours on end just to hear the music. It's probably one of my favorite video game arrangements. Sylphid is the name of the ship you pilot, and the story involves you piloting Sylphid in a last-ditch effort to save Earth from an alien invasion. And here is Thexter, also developed by GameArts and published in America by Sierra in 1987 for the Apple II GS. Here you control a mech which can also turn into a jet. It's kind of a side-scrolling run and gun game, and it's actually pretty fun. Next we have Roston. It was developed and published by Taito in 1990 for the Apple II GS, and it's a side-scrolling hack and slash game. This is probably one of my favorite hack and slash games because I remember playing it on multiple systems, including the arcade, and this is actually a really good and faithful port for the Apple II GS. And next we have Arkanoid. It was published and developed by Taito in 1988 for the Apple II GS. This is kind of a breakout clone with power-ups, quite a few power-ups, things like lasers, magnets, and multi-balls. The mouse control's not too bad, but I really wish I could plug a set of Atari 2600 paddles in to play it. And here is Crystal Quest. Originally a Mac game and ported to the Apple II GS in 1989. Basically, you're a little ball and you go around collecting all the crystals and you escape through the portal when you collect them all to go to the next level. You control it via mouse and it's not too bad. And next is Defender of the Crown. It was released for the Apple II GS in 1988, and this game was one that truly showed what the 16-bit computers of the time could do as far as graphics. This game is absolutely beautiful. You play as one of 4 Saxon knights fighting for control of medieval England. It was released on multiple platforms, but I had already done the Atari ST and Amiga computer collections, so I wanted just to include it somewhere because it's such a great game. And here we have King's Quest. The reason I'm including King's Quest in the Apple II GS compilation was because you could play King's Quest 1 through 4 on the Apple II GS, as well as the graphics were quite a bit better than the earlier Apple II, as well as the sound. And here we have Bard's Tale, a great RPG. It was released for the Apple II GS in 1987. The same year the second one also came out, Destiny Knight. Unfortunately, they never released a third one for the Apple II GS. This was one of those games that really showed the difference between the 16-bit computers and the 8-bit computers as far as graphics and sound. And finally we have Dragon Wars. It was released in 1990 for the Apple II GS. Some people consider this the spiritual successor to the Bard's Tale series. Dragon Wars definitely had some enhancements over the Bard's Tale series, such as a full-blown skill system and auto-mapping. Your party of 4 adventurers start off in the city of Purgatory. Your main objective is to escape Purgatory and topple the evil Namtar, the bad guy of the game. This was originally developed as Bard's Tale 4, but when Interplay changed publishers from Electronic Art, they had to change the name. Next will be my Mac SE. And this is my Macintosh SE. They were first released in 1987 and discontinued in 1990. My unit has 4 megs of RAM, a 40 meg hard drive, and System Software 7.1. The Mac SE also has the familiar monochrome display, just like the earlier Macintosh 512s and Mac Pluses. The earlier Macs were heavily used in desktop publishing, but they also made pretty decent gaming machines as well, and I thought I'd show you a few games that I actually enjoyed on my Mac. First up is Airborne. It was released in 1984 and was the first Mac game to use digitized sound. Basically, it's a lot like the Beachhead games from the earlier 8-bit computers. You basically have to fend off helicopters, planes, tanks, and even paratroopers from destroying your mortar gun. This is definitely one of the earlier Mac games, and it's actually quite a lot of fun. And next up is Journey. It was released in 1989 from Infocom, yes, the same people that brought us the iconic Zork games. This is a decent graphic adventure where you actually don't have to type in any commands, you can actually choose all the action verbs from a menu. In Journey, natural disasters and diseases have befallen the population, and a group of 4 villagers are sent to try to seek assistance from the wizard Asterix. Next up is Bard's Tale from Interplay. It was ported to the Macintosh in 1989, and unfortunately, this was the only Bard's Tale game to make it to the Macintosh. The story for Bard's Tale goes as follows. Scarebray, a small village, was very peaceful until the evil wizard Mangar the Black shows up, and monsters start invading the town, and only a small group of adventurers can save Scarebray and destroy Mangar. And finally, we have Might and Magic, released in 1987 for the Macintosh. This is the first installment in the series, and I gotta say that the Might and Magic series is definitely my favorite role-playing series of all time. 4 other games in the Might and Magic series was also made for the Macintosh, but those will come up next when I show off my Power Mac. One of my goals for 2014 is to beat the first 2 Might and Magic games. I've never actually completed either one of those, so I thought it was high time I finally put the time and effort in to complete them. Up next will be my Power Mac 6116 CD. And here is my Performa 6116 CD. It was first released in 1994 and discontinued in 1996. It came with a 601 PowerPC CPU running at 60 MHz. My machine has 24 megs of RAM, a 700 meg hard drive, and is currently running Mac OS 8.1. The early Power Macs utilized a proprietary video connector called an HDI 45, although an adapter was made to allow it to plug into the older Macintosh monitors. Next up will be a few games, starting with the Might and Magic series. And here we have Might and Magic 2 Gates to Another World. It was released in 1990 for the Macintosh computers. Might and Magic 2 had a few enhancements as well over its predecessor. First, you could hire non-player characters to join your party to fight for you. They also added skills such as Linguist and Cartographer, and also 2 new classes were added, the Barbarian and Ninja. I never got real far in Might and Magic 2, I always spent most of my time in 1 and 3, but this year I plan on beating both. Next up is Might and Magic 3 Isles of Terra. It was released in 1993 for the Macintosh computers. Just like 2, 3 also had 2 new character classes you could play, the Druid and the Ranger, which are 2 of my favorite. New skills were also available. As well, for the first time you could save your game anytime as opposed to having to go back to the end to save in the older games. Back in the day I got to the very end of this game, but unfortunately left a key somewhere in one of the dungeons and was never able to find it and complete the game. This is definitely one of my favorite Might and Magic games. And last in the Might and Magic series is World of Xene. This combines Clouds of Xene and Dark Side of Xene. It was released in 1995 for the Macintosh computers. When Clouds and Dark Side of Xene are installed together, you get World of Xene. Also, a CD version was released that also added enhanced speech. This was actually a really cool game, and the first that I can think of were two games combined into one game. It basically added extra quests, and I believe extra dungeons as well. Next we have Ultima 3 Exodus. No, this isn't the Origin Systems version. This was licensed by a company named Layerware. It's actually very well worth purchasing, as I believe it was made back in the early 90s, and they still support this product today. You can get it for the classic Macs, the 68,000 version. You can get it for Mac OS 8 or 9 as well as Mac OS X. Originally the game cost $25, but now actually you can get it for $5, and it's well worth the purchase. And finally we have Out of This World, probably one of my favorite action-adventure games. It was developed by Delphine Software and published by MacPlay in 1993 for the Macintosh computers. In the game you play Lester, a physicist who does an experiment that goes wrong when lightning strikes the building, and he's teleported to a strange alien world where he must fight to survive. Next up is my iMac. And here is my iMac G3. It was first released in 1998 and discontinued in 2003, but they still make iMac computers today. My computer has a G3 266 MHz processor, 96 megs of RAM, and a 6 gig hard drive. It also comes with a 6 meg 3D ATI Rage Pro video card. My machine has Mac OS 9.2 installed on it. Unfortunately, I really don't have any games installed on my computer, but you could play most of the games you could on a Windows machine of that time, such as Baldur's Gate, Diablo, and Warcraft 2. Next up are a couple Apple devices I use. And this is the iPhone 4. I get to use it through work. It's actually not mine, but I got a few games and apps installed on it. And this is my iPad Air. My wife got this for me for Christmas. I now probably have over 40 games installed on it, including a few apps as well. I keep my whole video game collection on it, as well as on my phone. Now I guess I'll show you a few of my favorite games and apps that I use on both these devices. First up is Flight Control. It was released in 2009 for iOS. In the game you assume the role of an air traffic controller at a busy airport. There's quite a few different maps you can play, and quite a few different planes that you have to basically guide into each of their type of airport. It's actually a really fun game, and I highly recommend it. Currently the game sold close to 4 million copies, and I can understand why. If you're looking for a game to play just a few minutes a day, this is definitely the one. Next up is a game that needs no introduction, Plants vs. Zombies. It's a zombie tower defense game released in 2010 for iOS and 2009 for the PC and Mac. I bet I've logged over 100 hours in this game, beat it more than 20 times, but it's still just a great game. The second one's okay, but it's just loaded with microtransactions, so I always come back to this one to play. And this is sort of Fargo Legends. It was originally released for the Commodore VIC-20 and Commodore 64, and in 2009 ported to iOS. This is a roguelike. It's a lot of fun. You basically are on the search for the Sword of Fargo. And on your search you're going to have to contend with all kinds of creatures, traps, and lots of treasure on the way to finding the sword. And finally we have Midway Arcade. It was released in 2012 for iOS and came with 10 games. Those 10 games are Spy Hunter, Rampage, Joust, Root Beer Tapper, Defender, Arch Rivals, Air Hockey, Arcade Basketball, Pool, and Rollball. They released 2 expansion packs for it, 3 games in each. The first expansion pack was Narc, Total Carnage, and APB, and the other expansion was both Gauntlet games and Wizard of War. It's actually a pretty cool little pack. I'm not sure if it has iCade support since I don't have one yet, but at some point when I do, I really hope it does. Next up I'll show you a couple apps I use on my iPad. One, it helps me keep track of my game collection, and the other, when I'm out in the wild looking for games, it helps me find prices. And here we have CL Games. This is a game collecting app for iOS. It also goes along with the Game Collector 5.2 I have on my PC. That's where I enter all my game data in, and it has a cloud option where I upload my database to the cloud, and then I'm able to download it to my iPhone and my iPad. Now there's no chance of me buying a game and finding out that I've already got it in my collection. All I got to do is go to my phone, look it up, and I can see if I have it or not. I've done that multiple times. And finally, here is VGT Price Guide. I've only bought the price database once. It was 99 cents. I really don't see any reason to keep updating the price guide over and over again. I mostly just use this as a tool when I'm out game hunting to see about what a game's worth. This is how a few months ago when I saw Cowboy Kid, I was able to determine it was a $50 game and was able to pull the trigger and buy it. And there you have it, guys, my Apple collection. This is about a month in the making. Gosh, I'm sorry it took so long to make, but I finally got it done and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, could you please like and subscribe the video. Thanks again, guys.